Guys, today I am coming to you with a review of one of the Nabla Cosmetics Cutie Collection palettes. Now, Nabla Cosmetics is based in Milan, Italy. Are they still considered indie? They used to be considered an indie brand. I would think they still are. Anyway, they recently came out with a Cutie collection which had 3 different palettes, like mini palettes. Each one was 6 pans. And they are the Metropolitan, the Platinum, and the Wild Berry palette. Now, this Cutie collection also came with 3 lipsticks and I believe 3 like eyeliner pencils. I think that's what they are. Each one was supposed to go with a certain palette. Now, I don't own anything from Nabla Cosmetics. I just never have. I have nothing against them. I've been interested in some of their products anyways. But this Cutie collection came up on Trend Mood, and one palette in particular caught my eye for the whole palette, and then one shade in particular was just like glowing. Now that is the Platinum palette from the Cutie collection. It looks like so, and it was this silver shade right here that just like drew me in, and I was like, you know what, I'm buying this palette. So that's what I did. That's the only thing that I have from this Cutie collection. The other palettes weren't really of interest to me. And I know this is kind of a neutral palette. I believe it's actually the most neutral palette they have in the collection, but these metallics, particularly, like I said, that silver just really drew me in, and I went for it. I believe this palette was $24. I got it on Ulta. I think that is where they're selling it, online only at Ulta, and then through their Nabla Cosmetics website. This palette is definitely a mini palette. It's pretty thick and dense, but it is a mini palette. There are only 6 shades, and the size of it is a little bit smaller than I thought it was going to be. For reference, here is one of the ColourPop 12 pan shadow palettes, and then here is the Nabla Cosmetics Cutie Collection Platinum palette. So it's a little smaller. It is, I don't know if you can tell, it is a little thicker, and it does have, oh god, it has a mirror. Now the pan size difference, let's take a look here. So you do get a bigger pan size, and it is a different shape. To me, as long as it isn't some like crazy weird shape, it really doesn't bother me. Again, this is my first experience with Nabla Cosmetics shadows, or really any of their items. I did this eyeshadow look today with this palette, and I will say these shadows are incredibly pigmented, really creamy. They are, because of that, they are there's a little bit of a learning curve when using them. That's not a bad thing at all, but because of the pigment and the rich nature of the shadows, you do kind of have to adjust and get used to using them. I will go ahead and swatch these shadows for you now. There are 2 mattes and 4 metallics. So we will start at this top corner here with the darkest matte shade. I can't pronounce it. I'm gonna butcher this. Tenenbra? I'm gonna guess that's it. One swipe. It's an incredibly pigmented, dark matte. Okay, now moving on to the first metallic shade. It is called Gem System, and it's like a gunmetal shade with silver, black, maybe even a little bit of brown sparkle to it. Okay. Go. These, as I said before, these shimmers, metallics, are incredibly pigmented. That is not even the most pigmented one in this palette. I would say there is a little bit of a difference between them. I think some of them you would consider more like a glitter metallic and some of them more like a shimmer. Okay, moving on to Rich Darling. It's kind of the warm toned shimmery brown shade in this palette. This one is like butter. Okay. I am a big fan of the shade. I really like the tone of it. I feel like it's a little bit more unique and it's warm tone without being like orange, which I can really appreciate. All right, moving on to the gold metallic shade in this palette called Priceless. I'd say this is the one shade I have worked with the least out of all of these so far. Okay. Oh, that was... Oh, that is kind of a shitty swatch, but it has a really nice color payoff. Again, I have like very little complaints about these metallic shades. The only thing I would say is that there is some fallout, so you just kind of have to work with it. Wetting your brush, you are gonna get more of a punch packed with the metallic quality of the shadow, but you could pretty much say that with any metallic shadow from any brand. Okay, moving on to my favorite shade in the palette, Luxuriance. It is the beautiful silver shade. Oh my god, it's just, oh, look at that. Oh my god. That is just crazy. Like, you think this is like a really vibrant gunmetal, and then you swatch this and you're like, it's got nothing on it. Rarely do I see silver shadows like this actually have this kind of payoff. You see them in the pan and you're like, oh my god, it's so pretty. And then you swatch it or you use it on your eye and you're just like, oh. That's disappointing. This one, I would say, is the one you have to work with the most. However, to me, it's completely worth it and you don't have to like bend over backwards to get it to work. Okay, the last shade in this palette is Aristocracy, and it is the other matte. Let's go ahead and these mattes just are so creamy. It's beautiful. Oh god, I'm getting so shitty at this. Okay. And there we have the other matte in this palette. You see all of the shades. I think this is a really well done palette. I think the only thing that I'm kind of missing is a lighter brown to use as a transition shade. However, I think these metallics are beautifully done, and to be completely honest, you're almost mostly buying this palette for the metallic shades, because to me they are standout shades. They're neutrals, but they're unique neutral tones, and they pack a very serious punch, like I said, especially that silver shade. I honestly can't say enough good things about that silver shade. I just want to like bathe in it. Okay, now that we have swatched all of these shades, let's go ahead and get into this eye look, and then I'll wrap it up and give you my final thoughts. With this palette, I find that it is better to do your base after you apply the shadow. Some of the shimmery metallic shades have some fallout. I have my eyebrows on and then some concealer and some eyeshadow primer. To start this look off, I'm actually going to take my bronzer and just run that through my crease really quick. I find that this palette does not really have a lighter brown shade, and the two mattes in here are very pigmented, so I'm just gonna do this real quick to kind of help set a base down. Now actually getting into this palette, taking this kind of terracotta brown shade called Aristocracy, and I'm gonna take one of my favorite Sonia Kashuk brushes. This is the blending crease brush, and I'm just gonna pick that up very lightly and tap off the excess, because as I said, these matte shadows are incredibly pigmented, and I'm gonna use that to feather out my crease, and I'm really gonna take my time building up that color. With these matte shades, there's a little bit of kickback in the pan, but it is very minor.
Next, taking this darkest, really deep brown shade, I'm gonna butcher this, it's Tenebrae? I don't know. I'll put the name. Anyways, it is the other matte shade in the palette. I'm gonna take that on this no-name brush. It's kind of like a slightly fluffy crease brush, and I'm gonna use that to deepen the outer V of my eye. Again, this shade is probably, in my opinion, the most pigmented shade of this palette, and because it's so dark, you want to use it very carefully. A little bit goes a really long way. On the eye, this shade almost comes off as a black, but it is in fact a cool-toned deep brown. To me, that is something that you have to be really careful with because it can look kind of muddy, but it is a beautiful shade. You just sort of have to be careful what colors you pair it with. Now I'm gonna go back in with this Aristocracy shade to just buff out that deeper color. I don't know if you can see on the corner of this eye, there is a little bit of fallout from that darker brown shade. The mattes aren't really where I see the issue with the fallout though. That is gonna come next as we dip into the metallics. Now I'm gonna go in with this brown metallic shade called Rich Darling. These metallics are really buttery. I'm just gonna pick that up on my ring finger and pat that on the outer half of my eyelid. I'm gonna go back in with that deep matte brown just to blend the edge of that metallic shimmer and the matte shade. Now for the really fun part, I guess this is technically like kind of a little bit of a cut crease. I'm gonna be using this beautiful silver metallic shade called Luxuriance. Now, I find through trial and error that this shade works best if it has a tacky base. So like an unset eyeshadow base, concealer, glitter primer. I'm gonna be going in with my e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer, and I'm just gonna carve out the like inner half to inner third of my inner lid. Another thing to really help this shade pop and kind of stick together and not go all over the place. This is the one shade that I find that has a lot of fallout. So we're gonna do everything we can to prevent that. I'm gonna wet my brush. All right, now I'm gonna pick up that silver shade and we are gonna apply that where I cut out my concealed part of my eyelid. Damn. That is intense. And to help blend that into the other metallic, I'm going to pick up that Rich Darling brown metallic shade again and just pat that where the two meet. All right, I'm gonna go clean up under my eyes, put on the rest of my face, and I will be right back. Okay, this eyeshadow look is done. I just took those two matte shades and ran them along my lower lash line to kind of help smoke that out a little bit. Overall, can't say enough good things about that silver shade. I'm obsessed with it. It's a little finicky, but once you get the hang of it, you can't go wrong. I would say go for it. Purchase this palette if you are looking for some new, unique, beautiful, metallic, neutral shades. As everyone says, there are a ton of neutral eyeshadow palettes out there and they all look the same and they're all boring, and I agree with that to a certain extent. I think this is one of those palettes that if you're looking for more unique, neutral shades overall that perform well, that have a great impact, that are pretty affordable. I mean, it's $24 for 6 shades. That's not that bad, especially if you compare that to like Natasha Denona or Pat McGrath or something like that. Yes, you are not going to be able to create a never-ending amount of looks out of this palette because there are only 6 shades with 2 mattes. However, I think it's a great addition to my collection and I'm really happy that I purchased it. I have no regrets. I think that this is a great palette to use with other palettes to accompany them. And overall, I think it is a really good choice. So that is all I have for you today. If you're interested in this palette, I will link it down below. I hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, washing your hands, keeping distance from each other, and I will quit rambling and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye.